So good morning class. Today I will continue with the fertility, infertility female. So after reading the male fertility, we will start with the causes of female infertility. Causes of female infertility are different. You can start either from upside or downward side, or it can be ovarian. If we start from upside, it can be ovarian cause, there may be tubal cause, there may be uterine cause, cervical causes, vaginal or peritoneal causes, and unexplained infertility. Here you can see this is when we have started from this side. So ovarian cause imparts around 30 to 40% of infertility. Tubal cause imparts around 25 to 35%. Ovulatory causes may be dysovulatory, anovulation, or copious corpus luteum insufficiency. Tubal cause may be different tubal diseases or tubal infections or different type of surgeries. So it imparts 25 to 35% of the cases. The uterine cause, it may imparts around 10%, and it is because of different uterine causes. It may be fibroid, chronic endometritis, syncytial or congenital malformations. Or only 5% is by cervical factor. It is because of ineffective sperm penetration, chronic cervicitis or immunological factor. The causes are pelvic causes. Any cause which is responsible for adhesions are included in the pelvic causes. So it may be endometriosis or different type of adhesion, maybe because of TB or maybe because of dense adhesion because of different type of PIDs. Before going in detail, you should know the how HPO axis maintain the helps in the ovulation. So hypothalamus gives the information to anterior pituitary by GnRH hormone, and this anterior pituitary release the FSH and LH. FSH act on the ovary and on the granulosa cells of ovary, and this will secrete the estrogen and inhibin. This inhibin have the negative feedback effect on FSH secretion, while thicker cell secretes the androgen, having positive effect on secretion of estrogen, and estrogen itself having the negative feedback action on the anterior pituitary and hypothalamus. So this is the HPO axis, and how you can see it helps in the ovulation or hormonal maintenance. So we will start from ovarian cause. So ovarian causes may be different. Ovulatory disorder, it may be oligoanovulation or anovulation. The anovulation is absent ovulation. Oligo is infrequent ovulation. Or there may be oocyte aging, ovarian cyst, luteal phase defect, luteinized unruptured follicular defect. They are the different causes of ovarian failure. So this anovulation or oligo-ovulation or ovulatory dysfunction may be because the defect may be at the central level. It may be at the HPO axis. So primary hypothalamic pituitary dysfunction, the causes may be different. If there is a history of intense exercise and eating disorder, and because of stress, it will act on the hypothalamus, and this causes the dysfunction of pituitary and hypothalamus. Idiopathic hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, hyperprolactemia, lactational, this causes the lactational amenorrhea because causes the negative feedback defect on the FSH and LH secretion. Pituitary adenoma and other pituitary tumors. Kallmann syndrome we have already read. It is it includes the color blindness or this smell. There is a all cilias will be defective, and there is a deficiency of the pituitary or hypothalamic defect. trauma or radiations of the hypothalamic and pituitary area. Sheehan syndrome, where the all hormones of the pituitary are at the fault. Empty-cellular Tarsica syndrome, lymphocytic hypophysitis. These are the causes of ovulatory dysfunction because of the central defect. Second, other causes may be polycystic ovarian syndrome. The fault may be at ovary or fault may be at different endocrinal organ. So polycystic ovarian syndrome, hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism, some hormone producing tumor like adrenals and ovary, chronic liver and renal diseases, Cushing syndrome, congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Premature ovarian failure may be because of autoimmune or genetic or surgical or idiopathic or related to drug or radiations. And Turner syndrome or androgen insensitivity syndrome, where ovaries are atretic. So ovaries are atretic, so it is not working from starting. So these are the different causes for the anovulation or oligoanovulation. Different medicines are also there. It may be estrogen, progesterone contraceptive, or any type of OCPs. Progestins, definitely antidepressant and antipsychotic drugs which causes the hyperprolactinemia. Some corticosteroid and chemotherapeutic agent having direct effect on the ovaries. The WHO classified the anovulation causes of anovulation in 3 types according to the hormone levels. So we kept the central cause, the hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, where the LH and FSH are low, but because of this LH and FSH low, there is if estrogen is also low, so all hormones will be low in hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, and this includes the central cause, hypothalamic or pituitary cause. Second is the normogonadotropic normogonadism or normoestrogenic anovulation. Here all FSH, LH and estrogens are at normal level, but its ratio is different. So it includes the PCOS, that is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and some ovulate occasionally, especially those with oligomenorrhea. So normogonadotropic normogonadism is for the class 2. Class 3 includes the hypergonadotropic hypoestrogenism and ovulation. Here there is a primary ovarian failure. It is premature ovarian failure. This causes the decrease in estrogen level, but increase in because there is no negative feedback effect, so FSH and LH level will be high. So it is hypergonadotropic hypogonadism. Hyperprolactinemia and ovulation is also included in this category. So anovulation or causes of anovulation or oligoanovulation is divided into 3 parts. Type 1 is hypogonadotropic or hypogonadism. This includes the central cause. Anovulation, that is normogonadotropic normogonadism, and it includes all hormone level will be normal, but ratio is different, includes the PCOS. And third one is the hypergonadotropic hypogonadism, where there is a premature ovarian failure or primary ovarian failure is present. So this is the different classes for the anovulation. Second cause, these are the causes of ovarian or defect in the ovarian function, ovulatory dysfunction. Second cause is the oocyte aging, because the decrease in fecundability with aging is likely due to decline in both quantity and quality of the oocyte. That means the age with age, both the quality and quantity of ovum or oocyte is decreased. It can be indicated by this. You can see here initially the germ cells at mid gestation female fetus, it is around 6 to 7 million follicle, then it goes decreased from 6 to 7 million to 1 to 2 million at birth, and from birth it decreases to 3 lakhs at the onset of the puberty, and the rate of follicular loss accelerated after the woman reaches her mid 30s. So the age decreases the fecundability. Cigarette smoking, radiations, chemotherapy and autoimmune disease also accelerate the follicular loss. When you see the patient with the depleted ovarian follicular pool, usually they will ovulate, but the quality will be poor from the remaining terminal follicular pool. So quantity and quality both are decreased with the age. When we talk of the ovarian cyst, you can see some data are there which concluded that ovarian cyst is for the cause of infertility is unclear. So role in the infertility for ovarian cyst is unclear. So you could not say about this. Luteal phase defect. The other cause may include the luteal phase defect. In 1949, Jones defined the corpus luteum defect in the progesterone secretion. So luteal phase is important for the implantation part because corpus luteum secretes the progesterone. This helps in the formation of the receptive endometrium, which helps in implantation. So luteal phase defect is defined as a luteal phase not capable of implantation or maintenance of pregnancy. It may be defect may be at the length of the progesterone secretion, or there may be the level of the progesterone secretion. So luteal phase shorter than 12 days. Duration between which is luteal phase is duration between ovulation and menses with relatively normal progesterone level. So overall it is decreased. The length of total days of progesterone secretion is decreased with normal level of progesterone, but or another it can be normal length of luteal phase with inadequate progesterone. So overall progesterone is decreased either in the duration form or either in the its level, progesterone level. So a normal length luteal phase with the inadequate progesterone production or inadequate response of endometrium to normal progesterone production. This is known as luteal phase defect. Causes may be different. It can be abnormal follicular genesis, inadequate LH surge, inadequate progesterone by corpus luteum, aberrant end organ response, that is your endometrium may be at fault and it is not responsive to progesterone. Hyperprolactinemia and hypothyroidism are different causes of LPD. How do you make the diagnosis? The diagnosis to make the LPD, luteal phase defect, is challenging. You may take the time endometrial biopsy. It is 2 to 3 days out of phase, should help in the diagnosis of LPD. That means preferred time of endometrial biopsy should be between the 6 to 10 days post ovulation, as it coincides with the window of implantation. When you do just premenstrual biopsy, you should find the secretory endometrium. So this will see if you can see the effect of progesterone. If it is present, that means your progesterone is working well. If it is not present, that means there is a luteal phase defect. That means progesterone is not secreting in proper manner. So you can do the time endometrial biopsy. You can do even serum progesterone level. Progesterone is secreted in pulsatile manner, and if you do the level between this luteal this time premenstrual time, you will find value less than 30 nanogram ml is suggestive of the LPD. So serum progesterone level in the post ovulatory phase, if you find below 30 nanogram per ml, is suggestive of the LPD. Ultrasound is also helpful in making the diagnosis of LPD. Ultrasound can be used to track the follicle. If follicle is rupturing beforehand, that means at the 17 mm, normally it is ruptured at 18 to 20 mm of size. If it is rupturing at 70 mm of size, could suggest the LPD. Another cause may be luteinized unruptured follicle. Your follicle may be luteinized, but there is no ovulation at all. So dominant follicle is luteinized but remain unruptured. So there is no ovulation will occur. They may be drug induced like prostaglandin synthetase inhibitor or associated with endometriosis. Can be diagnosed by the ultrasound or laparoscopy. It may be treatable by administration of SCG at the right time to mimic the LS surge. So causes are, you have seen. So causes are ovulatory dysfunction, which may be in the form of central cause, or it may be in the central cause, or it may be because of PCOS, or it may be because of ovarian failure. It may be because oocyte aging, because with age your quality and quantity of oocyte is decreasing, and it may be ovarian cyst which is not confirmed. It may be, there may be luteal phase defect, either in the form of duration or either in the form of the inadequate progesterone level, or there may be luteinized unruptured follicle. You may not have ovulation in spite of luteinization. So luteinized unruptured follicle. Other causes include the fallopian tubes. There may be defect in the fallopian tube or abnormalities of fallopian tubes or pelvic adhesions. So tubal diseases and pelvic adhesions prevent the normal transport of oocyte and sperm through the fallopian tube. So disease may include the PID, which is the most common cause. Usually chlamydia infection is at fault. Other cause may be severe endometriosis, different surgeries, previous surgeries, or non-tubal infections like appendicitis, inflammatory bowel diseases which are responsible for adhesions, pelvic TB, salpingitis, ischemica nodosa. These are the responsible for fallopian tube abnormalities. These abnormalities are classified, or tubal diseases are classified into three parts by the British Fertility Society. It may be minor. That means minor includes the proximal occlusion without tubal fibrosis, or distal occlusion without tubal distension with healthy mucosa, appearance at HSG or salpingoscopy with only flimsy peritubal or ovarian adhesions. So minor causes includes proximal occlusion without fibrosis, distal occlusion without distension, healthy mucosa and flimsy adhesions. Intermediate tubal disease include unilateral severe tubal damage or limited dense adhesions of tubes and ovary. Severe tubal disease include bilateral severe tubal damage, bilateral severe tubal damage, extensive tubal fibrosis, tubal distension of more than 1.5 cm, abnormal mucosal appearance, bipolar occlusion, and extensive dense adhesions. So we have seen the cause may be at the ovarian level, at the tubal level, or your cultivating farm or your cultivating land may be at fault, that is uterus. So impaired implantation, either mechanical or due to reduced receptivity or reduced endometrial receptivity, are the basis of uterine cause of infertility. So causes may be different. Uterine leiomyoma, most probably submucosal is most important. which is associated with the lower pregnancy or implantation rate, while the submucosal is the least responsible for the pregnancy loss or infertility. So likely mechanism is this inhibits the normal implantation. Different type of uterine anomaly we have seen in the last class. Mullerian abnormality are significant cause of RPL as well as infertility. Septate uterus is septate uterus and unicornate uterus is associated with the poorest outcome, while the arcuate uterus is having the good outcome. Other structural abnormality associated with the infertility includes the endometrial polyps, synecdoche, and from the prior pregnancy related curettage. Endometriosis, when we talk of the endometriosis, they have the multiple mechanism for the infertility. It may cause the anatomic distortion of the pelvic adhesion because it causes the extensive pelvic adhesion. This is responsible for the tubal occlusion, and there may be damage to ovarian tissue also by the endometrioma and formation of surgical resection. Production of substance such as cytokines and growth factor also impairs the ovulation, fertilization and implantation. So endometriosis impairs the fertility at every level. Multiple mechanism for infertility in case of endometriosis. Cervical factor, normally at the mid-cycle time, cervical mucus is watery and copious, and this facilitates the transport of sperm. If there is production of mucus is impaired, or if it is too viscous, it impairs the this transport of sperm, or there may be congenital malformation or trauma to the cervix, which is responsible for stenosis. So this cervical factor is also responsible for infertility. Certain immune factors are also responsible, like antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. This causes the immunological rejection of early pregnancy or placental damage. Evaluation for this disorder depends upon the patient medical and family history, whether the patient is having the RPL, history of RPL, or failure to conceive. So you can make the diagnosis on the basis of this. Rest is unexplained cause, where you after thorough evaluation you could not reveal the cause, then it is kept in the unexplained infertility, and usually it is said that it is a small contribution from the multiple factor. The unexplained infertility is due to small contribution of multiple factors. So how to start the workup? After you are knowing there are different causes of this infertility in females. This you have seen the ovarian cause, tubal cause, uterine cause, and the cervical factor and immune factor and unexplained. How to start with? So when to start? You should start the investigation after 1 year of unprotected intercourse in the woman under the age of 35 years, and after 6 months if age is more, it is more than 35 years or older. Even you can start sooner in the woman with history of endometriosis, history of PID or reproductive tract malformation. So you may start as early as possible in these cases. The most important factor in the evaluation of infertile couple is history. You have to take history in detail. You should take the general history by the both couples should be present. Age should be asked definitely. Previous pregnancy by each partner. Duration of infertility. Sexual history. Frequency and timing of the intercourse. Use of lubricants. Impotence. Dyspareunia, contraceptive history. From the female partner, you should ask about the irregular menses, amenorrhea, detailed menstrual history, any vasomotor symptom which is indicating the POF, premature ovarian failure, changes of hair growth or breast discharge, stress, weight changes, exercise, drug, radiation exposure, cervical or uterine surgery. Previous medical history should be asked in detail. Previous female pelvic surgery, PID, appendicitis, intrauterine device use, ectopic pregnancy, endometriosis and leiomyoma. After taking history, you should go for the detailed examination. You should take the BMI. You should check for the galactorrhea or thyroid examination should be done. Look for the scar in abdomen, pelvic masses and abdominopelvic tenderness you should see, and along with the uterine enlargement and uterine mobility, cervical abnormality or abnormal vaginal discharge. You should look for the hirsutism, acne, acanthosis nigricans or underdevelopment. Secondary sexual characters are to be noted. After examination, you should ask for the hematological examination and urine examination. You should ask for the CBC, urine examination, sugar, thyroid profile and different hormone profile like LH, FSH, prolactin and dehydroepiandrosterone. Now after routine checkup, you should go by the examination by the organ unit. That means first you have to examine for the ovulation. If your history and by the routine examination, if you find it is difficulty in ovulation, you should assess for the ovulation. So assessment of ovulation, which is asked in your exam in detail, so you should learn it properly. So how do you assess the ovulation has been occurred or not? So there are different methods. It is either indirect method or direct method, or concluses the pregnancy. Indirect method, if she is menstruating in normal time and that menstrual history is normal, that means chances of ovulation is good. It can be by evaluation of peripheral or end organ changes like basal body temperature, cervical mucus study, vaginal cytology. Some hormone estimation you can do is the progesterone, LH, FSH, serum estradiol, urine LH, endometrial biopsy and the sonography. Direct, you can see the ovulation by direct method. Here you can find the, on laparoscopy you will find the ruptured ruptured follicular cyst with the fluid in the peritoneal cavity, and when you take out this peritoneal fluid and when you examine in the microscope, you will find the ovum. So this is the direct method. And conclusive, if your patient is pregnant, that means ovulation is already been occurred. So assessment of ovulation can be done with different methods. So one is the basal body temperature method. Here you should ask your patient to take temperature every day before arising from the bed. Results should be graphed. Sudden dip occurred the day prior to the ovulation and is followed by rise of 0.5 to 1 degree Fahrenheit. Dip followed by rise in the temperature just during ovulation indicates the ovulation in 98% of women and will ovulate within 3 days of nadir. This shows the biphasic pattern because just before ovulation there is a fall and there is a rise of 0.5 to 1 degree of Fahrenheit, and this temperature is maintained throughout the post-ovulatory phase, and just 2 to 3 days before the menstruation again it falls. So this is it's seen the biphasic pattern. Biphasic pattern you can see here. It is cheap and easy test, but results are inconsistent, and this provide evidence after the fact because it occurs usually after the ovulation. So it provides the evidence after the fact and may delay your diagnosis and treatment. Another method is cervical mucus study. It is become during the mid cycle or during the ovulation period. Cervical mucus become thinner, clear, copious and watery at the time of ovulation, and when you spread over the slide it will gives the fern pattern. This appearance of fern pattern beyond 22nd day of the cycle is suggestive of ovulation, because in the post-ovulatory phase, because of the progesterone, it causes the dissolution of sodium and chloride crystals. So following ovulation, there is a loss of stretchability, because this was thinner, clear, copious and watery. So it is very stretchable. So loss of stretchability or spin barket is suggestive of ovulation. If you see the vaginal cytology, so during the vaginal wall consisting of 3 layers: basal layer, intermediate layer and superficial layer. So if effect of this progesterone on vaginal cytology is what happened, it increases the parabasal cells, while the effect of estrogen, it increases the superficial cells. So when parabasal cells will increase, the maturation index will shift towards the left side. So you will find the more basophilic cells. So maturation index is also known as conification index, shift towards the left from mid cycle to the mid second half. So in the mid cycle or in the pre-ovulatory phase, it is on the right side. In the post-ovulatory phase, the maturation index will be on left side. So basal body temperature we have seen, cervical mucus study, vaginal cytology and then hormone estimation. So luteal phase progesterone, you can see, if you will find it is usually done in, because it is released in the pulsatile manner, so single level may not be useful. So you should take the progesterone level at day 8 and day 21 and increase from 1 nanogram per ml to 6 nanogram suggestive of ovulation. Serum LH level or urinary LH kit. Urinary LH kit is very sensitive and accurate. Daily estimation of serum LH at mid-cycle can detect the LH surge. So by the daily estimation of serum, either serum LH level or by the urinary LH level, you can detect the LH surge. Ovulation occurs 34 to 36 hours after the onset of LH surge and about 10 to 12 hours after the LH peak. So positive test precedes the ovulation by 24 hours. That means LH surge, if you can detect the LH surge, so you can detect the ovulation beforehand by the 24 hours. So useful for the timing of intercourse. Kits are accurate, quick and convenient, and ELISA based, using 40 milli international unit per ml as the threshold. So you can use this kit, urinary LH kit, or either you can use the serum LH level also. Serum estradiol level. Serum estradiol level attain the peak rise approximately 24 hours prior to LH surge and about 24 to 36 prior to the ovulation. So you can detect this serum estradiol level also. If you perform the endometrial biopsy, you can use the Zahrmann's curate or Pipil endometrial sampler, and it is usually done on the 21st to 23rd day of the cycle. You will, if there is a ovulation, you will find the some subnuclear vacuolation is the earliest evidence for appearing 36 to 48 hours following the ovulation because of the progesterone. So subnuclear vacuolation is the earliest evidence for ovulation 36 to 48 hours after ovulation, or secretory activity in the endometrial gland in the second half of the cycle is suggestive of the ovulation. You can use the ultrasonography also. So TVS is preferred. TVS is preferred. Serial ultrasound scanning is then performed from day 8 onwards. Normally follicle grows at 2 to 3 mm per day. Once it reaches around 10 to after this 10 to 12 mm, follicle normally grows 2 to 3 mm per day, and endometrial thickness is also, it can also be assessed. When this follicle level reaches around 80 to 20 mm and triple line of endometrium which reaches around 10 mm, it is best conducive to pregnancy. Ovulation can be characterized by decrease in the size. After 18 to 20 mm it is ruptured, so there is a decrease in the size of follicle, and by appearance of fluid in the cul-de-sac is suggestive of the ovulation. So for today it is enough, I think. In the next class we will take the fertility, rest of the fertility.